You. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I think that treasure is a little bit of what we saw yesterday, and the treasure that all of us have found, to know the love of the Lord, to know and to discover the greatest treasure, right? The greatest joy of our lives. And I think that we saw that yesterday. You know, I was vocation director before I went to Rome, and Sister has heard all of my stories ad nauseum, so, but I was for the Dominicans, and we've been very blessed with vocations, just like you guys, you all, and so, but the incredible thing is that one of the things that's really been a great joy is to see the different ways that the Holy Spirit is working in the church, the ways that the Lord works in all the different religious communities, and how they're all, how important each one of them are, and how different they are, you know. So it's amazing. And as much as I love the sisters in Rome, you know, I see them all the time, it's just so nice to actually be here and to see them in their element, you know. And I have to admit, one of my favorite parts was right after the profession when you got into the holy huddle. That was awesome. That was awesome. I was like, this is awesome. These sisters are bound together, you know, and that's what we told our men. I mean, I was also novice mastering in East Africa for 4 years, and we used to tell our novices, you know, the postulants and the novices, it's like the bond that we have in Jesus Christ is stronger than the bond that you have even with your own sibling. Amen. So now, naturally speaking, it's not like that, but that's the reality. And so there was an example of that yesterday in the Holy Huddle right after. So that was awesome. So anyway, that was a first for me. St. Rose of Lima. So she was a Dominican. She's Dominican tertiary, and I know as you all begin to grow and you have you call them apostles, right? Yeah. How that as part of your family as well, and it's just like for Dominicans, the Dominican Third Order, which we call Dominican laity also today, are very much a part of our family as well in the Dominican order. So Rose was the 7th of 11 children born to Oliva and Gaspar Flores, a member of the Viceroy Guard in Lima, Peru. Her parents had social prestige, but they had little money. Oliva loved to adorn her daughter with wreaths of the most beautiful roses, and the girl was so beautiful that her mother had high hopes for her. But like St. Catherine of Siena in a previous century, Rose was already known, had already shown signs that the hand of God was with her and over her. Her name was Rose of St. Mary. And she had a desire to teach everyone about silent, contemplative prayer. And she encouraged priests, in particular, to teach others how to love prayer. And that's one thing that I've seen from your sisters in Rome as well. The importance of prayer, the love of prayer, especially before our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. She had an incredible devotion to the Rosary because the Rosary is an example of mental and vocal prayer coming together. St. Rose is most famous for her penances, and that's what's always kind of been something odd about her that we don't always quite understand. The penances are not for their own sake, but as pure expressions of her love for Jesus and vicarious satisfaction for souls dear to him. Her love found other means of expression. Rose prayed long hours for her beloved archbishop, himself a saint, in his trials, and she beseeched God for the conversion of the Peruvian indigenous peoples. And she was taught to make herbal medicine, so she was trained in herbal medicine, and she took great delight in distributing these remedies to the long lines of the poor who came to where she was in Lima. The penances of Rose seem too much for us in another time, right? But they helped her to unite her sufferings to that of Jesus Christ's passion and death. And regarding the severity of her penances, sometimes we're like, whoa, that's way too much. It just seems off the charts, you know. But we remember that she had received special graces from God to perform these penances. So not everybody's called to such penances, right? And that's why typically today, such penances they're not really done except under the direction of a spiritual director, right? So there's some times where those things they happen, but they're typically not part of the ordinary life of Christians. And certainly religious today, we don't see such penances that seem extreme to us, but they are still done, obviously. Well, I can give one example. Back when George Weigel was writing his big book on John Paul II, Pope St. John Paul II, one of your favorites and our most distinguished alumnus at the Angelicum. So there was, I met somebody in Washington, D.C., and his aunt was somehow related to, his great aunt or somebody was the housekeeper for the young Father Karol Wojtyła when he was first ordained to the priesthood, his first assignment. And apparently she did the laundry for him. And she found on his t-shirts there was bloodstains on his back, you know, from the discipline. So this is anyway, I connected this person with George Weigel when he was writing the book on him, and I don't know if it made it into the book or not, but it's just interesting that some saints are called to extraordinary things, but most of us are pretty weak and pretty miserable, right? We don't quite are called, and in our tradition, we always say that just living Dominican life and being with the brothers is enough penance if you just accept it, right? And I think all of us can understand that to some extent. So it's natural that one of Rose's pure love of God would be to seek a religious vocation, but she discerned that it was not God's will that she enter a cloister, if you can imagine. A short time later, she received a sign in prayer that she was to become a Dominican tertiary and to live at home in her family's. She had a little hermitage in the back of her family's home, and to live like Catherine of Siena, right near her parents. And at age 20, she made her profession in the third order of St. Dominic. She had a very strong devotion to the Blessed Sacrament, to the real presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, and she spent many hours in adoration. She interceded for evangelization for the people of Peru, that they would accept the gospel, and she encouraged especially the friars that they should remain constant with all their mind and strength in the work of converting souls. And she was a little put off by the friars who spent so much time in their studies, and she was like, would you just get out there and preach the gospel? So she was, a little bit of that was inside, and the same was with Catherine of Siena. It's like, get the lead out, brothers, get out there. There's so much that has to be done, and here you are with your nose stuck in a book. But, as we know, the books are important, right? They help us to unlock the human and the natural, and especially to understand human nature, which is perfected by the grace of God, right? It's made more fully human, right? So that's a wonderful gift. And she spent many hours in adoration. She was a woman of deep prayer. One of the most spectacular miracles occurring with Rose of Lima was when Dutch pirates invaded Lima's harbor and defeated the Peruvian fleet. this was due to the Reformation. They intended not only to loot the city, but also to desecrate the churches. And the women, children, and religious of Lima took refuge in the churches. And in the church of Santo Domingo, Rose stirred them all to prayer. And it is said that the pirates burst into the church of Santo Domingo in Lima. And there they were confronted with the terrifying spectacle of a young girl ablaze with light holding a monstrance with the Blessed Sacrament. Is that just so dramatic or what? That is just such a great story. Go away, it's just awesome. So the power and the grace of God. So that's what happened. They turned away and they fled to their ships and they left. And as she continued her prayer, penance, and good works, Rose underwent a new time of suffering. In spite of her prayers, ruthless Spanish landlords oppressed and exploited her people. Rose came down simultaneously with asthma and arthritis. She was not a healthy person. On top of this, she began to have dreams, which caused her a lot of problems as well. Her only support came from the Dominican saint, Brother Martin de Porres, who assured her that her visions and spiritual aridity were signs of the highest friendship with God, the dark night of the soul, right? That when we don't seem to experience the emotional support of the Lord sometimes, which we go through, right? Especially we who are consecrated religious, we go through it. And we have to persevere, right? In prayer. So, other religious, through jealousy, had Rose examined by, the office of the Inquisition at the time, and the inquisitors found her to be enjoying God's highest favor in the midst of her suffering and desolation. And during this time, Rose received the grace of mystical marriage with Christ and had a ring engraved with the words he spoke to her, "Rose of my heart, be my spouse." So she received that ring with those words inscribed on it. Not long after, she died in the year 1617 at the age of 31, and she was the first canonized saint of the New World. So she stands out among our Dominican saints in her understanding of the immeasurable value of redemptive suffering. Speaking of the power that directed her life, she wrote that same force strongly urged me to proclaim the beauty of divine grace. So as we celebrate her, and as we continue to celebrate this beautiful time of your community, a time of growth, a time of joy, a time of consolation, and a time of great hope. It's a wonderful thing under the gaze of the Blessed Mother, right? And she who to whom you have a special devotion. I just loved Mother's words yesterday about part of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary is these sisters. So, because I've been praying for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary for so long, it's like, well, this is part of it. This is part of what's happening, and God has His own plans, and God's plans are always good, right? The people ask me, especially last year during the pandemic, and I think all the sisters have heard an earful from me on this one too about the pandemic. What does it mean, and how can we describe it? What can we say about it prophetically? And my God, my Lord, what does it mean? It means, pandemics or pestilence, the plague, they were always a punishment from God in the Old Testament, always, But what parent does not chasten or discipline his or her child? We need that. We need that. God has a plan. God's plans are always good. Always. They're always beautiful. And and when I look at how complicated things are today in our world, if you watch the news, it's like Sister Maria Angela tells me, "Father, I think you need to probably limit the amount of media that you take in." Because and she doesn't always say it to me, but she's not afraid to say what I need to hear in the office, because sometimes I get rolling, and it's like, okay, wait a second here, okay, keeping with the Dominican charism, maybe that doesn't make sense to do that. So, and I appreciate her so much. And all the sisters. It's just, but it's like we have to, particularly when for me, I think in terms of how complex the world is today, and it seems overwhelming, and it seems like, gosh, how in the world, how is it going to be resolved with, the divisions and the hatred and all the problems, from Cuba to Afghanistan to, from every part of the world. It's just, there's always something, some kind of a disaster going on, and just the divisions in our own country, It's like, so what is it? But I think for me and in my own life, and I'm sure you all have experienced this as well, that the prayers of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the love that she has for us and how she takes what's complicated and difficult and confusing, and we put them into her hands, the issues that we have, the problems that we've got. And she makes everything beautiful and simple in the eyes of God. She takes what's complicated, what seems impossible, might be, the stirrings of the heart in regard to our vocation or this challenge or that sister or this issue or that problem. And she makes everything, and she works behind the scenes, and she makes things simple and beautiful in the eyes of God. So, and that, of course, is exactly what happened yesterday when we saw the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary with these sisters. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has to buy that field. We have found the Lord, and so we are here. And so we thank him for the gift of his love. We thank him for the gift of his Blessed Mother, and we thank him for the gift of the Holy Eucharist.